Welcome to the podcast, How to Be Well and Strong. I'm your host, Jacqueline Genova, and I'm excited to have you join me as I speak with some of the leading figures in the fields of wellness, integrative medicine, and mental health, as we discover what it truly means to be well and strong in both body and mind. Get ready to be empowered, inspired, and motivated about being an advocate for your own health. Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited for today's episode of the show in which I welcome Dr. Terry Wahls. Dr. Wahls is a physician who also happens to have secondary progressive multiple sclerosis, which for 4 years kept her in a tilt-recline wheelchair. Dr. Wahls used a food and a lifestyle plan she created specifically for her brain to regain her health, and she is now able to ride her bike to work every single day. She first shared how she did this in her incredible popular TEDx talk, which has amassed over 4 million views, as well as in her incredible book, The Wahls Protocol, a radical new way to treat all chronic autoimmune conditions using paleo principles. She's been a major advocate for the intersection between diet, brain health, and autoimmunity. She currently oversees millions of dollars worth of clinical trials at the University of Iowa. Dr. Wahls, welcome to the show. I've been a fan of your work for a very long time, as I was just saying, particularly since hearing your first TEDx talk, Minding Your Mitochondria, which became quite a hit. And you were a pioneer in a topic that, not many people were talking about. And I just wanted to say thank you for doing all of the wonderful work that you do.
It was certainly a journey. As you and many of your audience know, I had profound disability. Despite getting the very best care from the best MS centers in the country and treating my disease very, very aggressively. And it was when I put together what I learned from ancestral health, from functional medicine, from my own review of the basic science, that I put together diet, lifestyle, targeted supplements, and a year later, I'm up walking again, I'm biking, and it changed. I thought about disease and health, and I began talking about my story, about my recovery, and boy, was there a reaction. I got condemned for having dangerous ideas. I was banned as a speaker, and I got called in to my boss's office at the VA and my boss at the university. They wanted to know what was going on, why was I banned? I was being severely criticized. And at the time, I brought with me a handful of scientific papers to say, okay, here's what I'm doing and why. And my chief of staff at the VA said, but it's not the standard of care, you have to stop. And so I sort of leaned back and I said, of course, John, send an email out to all of my colleagues, to all the internal medicine faculty that we have to follow the standard of care, that we can't use the latest science to guide what we're doing. Of course, I'll follow that. I sat back and I smiled and I waited. And he looked sort of cross and I kept smiling. And, I don't know how long that standoff went. It felt like a very long time. It probably wasn't that long. They said, okay, Terry, if anyone gets hurt, you'll go through peer review. And I'm like, of course, John. If anyone gets hurt, of course I go through peer review. And in the end, John became a huge champion. And my chief of internal medicine at the time was a rheumatologist, or is a rheumatologist. And his response is, you need to get a case report written up, Terry. And he, asked me to get that written up with my treating neurologist, my treating physical therapist, and the scientists who studied electrical stimulation of muscles that inspired me to add the E-stem. So we got that written up. And then as I was getting that off for publication, he called me back and told me to work on a case series. So we did that. And then he called me back again. So, I'm getting a lot of direction from my bosses and said, now I want you to do a safety and feasibility trial to see if other people with progressive MS can do what you did. So your question is, will they do all the stuff that you did, your diet, your supplements, your exercise, your meditations, your electrical stimulation of muscles? So this is a lot. For people who are severely disabled, with progressive MS. And so we did that. Our first study was 10, the next study was 20. And as you know, people were able to implement everything. The biggest side effect was if you were overweight, you lost weight without being hungry. And that for the vast majority, the fatigue resolved, their quality of life improved. And as a group, we held their walking and hand function normal or, stable. And half of them had clinically meaningful improvements in either hand function or walking function. And with progressive MS, Jackie, you anticipate a 10 to 15% decline every single year. So we stopped the decline, which is huge, and we reversed it in half, which is even more dramatic.
That's truly incredible. And Dr. Wahls, one of the things about your story, and I've shared this with you, that truly inspires me is that you didn't just stop at what your neurologist and doctors were telling you, right? You questioned everything, you did your own research, and you were able to find a very successful protocol.
The first 3 years, so when I was first diagnosed, I go and start reading the research and reading reviews, and it's terribly depressing because it's a progressive disease. Within 10 years, half aren't working because of severe fatigue and need cane walkers or wheelchairs. And so I'm very agitated. I found the best people. We agreed to treat my disease very, very aggressively. And then when I hit the wheelchair and my trigeminal neuralgia was clearly getting worse every year, I asked myself, am I really doing everything that I can? And that's when I went back and I was like, okay, clearly this is going to be pretty terrible. I'm already in a wheelchair at year 3 of this. So that's when I start reading the basic science, and I developed the theory that mitochondria dysfunction is what causes disability. And at first I'm focused on adding supplements. I've already switched from a vegetarian diet, low-fat vegetarian diet, which everyone would say is a really great diet, very heart-friendly, to a paleo diet. So no grain, no legumes, no dairy. And that was a big change. Took me about 6 months to make the change. And I was like, well, I don't know how long it will take to fix my brain. This has probably been going on for quite a while. Maybe it takes 4 or 5, 6 years, but at least I'm doing something. And that's when I started adding the supplements. And by 2007, so I've now got 4 years in my tilt-recline wheelchair, 7 years of my diagnosis. I am so weak, I cannot sit up in a regular chair anymore. I'm in a zero-gravity chair with my knees higher than my nose. I can take just a few steps with 2 walking sticks. I have severe, severe fatigue. I'm still mentally clear, so I'm staffing residents in my clinics at the VA from my zero-gravity chair with my knees higher than my nose. I'm at home with my family with my knees higher than my nose, and that's how I'm eating my meals. And it's so clear to me that my future, I'm probably going to become bedridden by my disease because I'm already very close. I'm going to be probably demented by my disease because I'm beginning to have some brain fog. And my electrical face pains, the trigeminal neuralgia, has been getting relentlessly worse. It's very disturbing to my family to watch that. But I also knew that, my kids are watching, and they'd been watching me since diagnosis. And so I could either give in to the despair I felt, or you just keep doing the best that you can. And so I'm tinkering with my self-care. I'm going to work. And I discovered this study using electrical stimulation of muscles in people who are paralyzed. I convinced my physical therapist to let me have a test session. He says it's for athletes. Yes, he could grow bigger muscles, but he doesn't know if my brain could talk to the bigger muscles. And he gives me that test session. It hurts really bad. But when it's over, I feel great. And he says it's probably the endorphins. And he adds electrical stimulation of muscles to my physical therapy. And what's wild is that same week, I discovered the Institute for Functional Medicine, and I ordered their course on neuroprotection. So I go through that, which, by the way, is sort of tricky because it's a lot of basic science, biochemistry. I'm taking notes. I have a longer list of supplements, which I order and add. So I'm adding these supplements. I'm doing eSTEM. And then I'm embarrassed about this one, Jackie. I have this big aha, like, what if I redesign my paleo diet based on this long list of supplements, figure out where they are in the food supply? I'll probably get extra things in those foods that are good for me. So that's several more months of research. And I start this new way of eating at the end of December 26, 2007. And as I said, I can't sit up anymore, any more than 10 minutes. I really have increasingly severe, difficult face pain. I began to have brain fog. And I start this new way of eating with these lists of foods. And by the end of January, my fatigue is gone. My brain fog is clearly much less. And my physical therapist says, Terry, you're definitely stronger. And he advances my exercises. So I can now do exercises 10 minutes twice a day.
That's truly incredible. And Dr. Wahl, so you had mentioned that you switched from a vegetarian diet to a more paleo style diet. You've also been a huge advocate of the consumption of dark leafy greens, which are all, nutrients for the retina and the brain. So what did your daily plate consist of primarily?
Well, so in the beginning, in 2008, my daily plate was an amazing number of greens. So it was probably about 6 cups of green leafy vegetables, kale, spinach, Swiss chard, collards, cilantro, parsley, and other green herbs.
All my favorites.
Yep, really delicious stuff. And then another plateful of cabbage, onion, mushroom, family types of vegetables. And then a plate full of really deeply colored stuff, beets, carrots, berries. And the way to think about this, as I teach it to other folks, is if you cut the food item in half, and there's pigment all the way through, berries, peaches, plums, cherries, those would all qualify as colored. And then we had already been doing the paleo diet, so meat, fish, poultry, and plenty of fats. We talk about the omega-3, the omega-6 fats. These are fats that my body can't make. And so the nuts and seeds have the omega-6 fats. Wild fish, grass-finished animals have the omega-3 fats. Flax, walnut, hemp have some of the omega-3 fats. They have both omega-3 and omega-6 fats. I actually liked a lot of olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, but I like to use that cold. And so I'd make pestos, green herbs, lots of olive oil, some garlic, make that into a pesto. I'd put lots of pesto over everything that I was eating. And, for the first 4 years, easily I was eating probably 6 cups of greens every day. And if I didn't have that amount of greens, I could tell in about 36 hours, my mental clarity took a dip. Now, what's super interesting, Jackie, is after 4 years of eating that many greens, I must have finally caught up with what it was that I needed. And I didn't need quite that amount of greens. So I think that's super, super interesting. I would eventually become much more of a ketogenic eater. And so I probably have a lower amount of greens, a lower amount of particularly the starchy vegetables and starchy fruits. So in my program, I created a sort of a stepped approach, because the standard American diet has about 250 grams of carbs. My level 1 diet has about 100 grams of carbs. The level 2 has about 80 grams of carbs, and the level 3 has about 50 grams of carbs. So it sort of depends on where you're at in terms of how many carbs I have the person consume.
Interesting. And Dr. Wahls, what are your thoughts on the consumption of gluten and dairy? Because we know that milk has molecular mimicry with brain structures, right?
So absolutely. So people with neurologic disorders, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, I think we're more likely to have autoantibodies, antibodies against the protein in grain known as gluten, the protein in dairy known as casein. And ideally, I recommend that people remove added sugars from their diet, remove gluten and dairy from their diet. I have also learned, though, to listen to people. And when I'm having the conversation, we talk about what I think is the most therapeutic options for them. And then I ask them, so is that something you think you can do? Or do we have to start with a smaller next step so you can be successful? And depending on where people are at, they might be like, okay, I'm ready to be all in and we'll do the most therapeutic next step. Others are like, oh, that's too big for me. I need something smaller. And then we have a conversation what they can adopt successfully. And for some, it's going to be a focus on a meditative practice or maybe exercise first, and then we'll begin working on the diet. For some, we can start on the diet. We have to first do the adds. So we talk about what they're going to add to their diet. And so we focus on getting more greens in, getting more of the non-starchy vegetables in. And when they are successful with that, and part of what I discuss is if you're probably having 6 servings of grain products every day, if you're going to add up the vegetables, you'll have to swap vegetables for some of the grain products. And so we will gradually ramp up the vegetables, reduce the grains, so you can get those vegetables in. And when you are ready, we'll take the gluten-containing grain out, and you could put in a few gluten-free grains. And when you're ready, we'll take out the dairy products and use nut milks and coconut milk instead. But I want to do all of this at a pace that people can be successful at. And some folks are ready to go home, purge the house of all the foods that are not so good for them, and they're all in. And to do that, you really need to have your household ready to support you. Because I explained that these foods are very addicting, they're very delicious, they're cheap, they're plentiful. And for most of us, if they're in our eating space where I see them, where I know they're at, before I know it, I'll be opening the cupboard, opening the refrigerator, taking that food out. It will find my mouth, I'll be chewing, and there it is.
Have you noticed that complete restriction in patients can often lead to binging?
Oh, absolutely. Because and the way I talk about it is this is like asking someone who's an alcoholic who loves beer to continue to refrain from the beer, but still have it in the refrigerator to go out with their friends who are drinking beer. And it's unrealistic. You would not do that to someone who knows they have an alcohol problem. They are going to control their environment, and it may mean changing who they're socializing with. Food, we can't stop eating, so we're going to have to control our environment. And I ask people to, identify what you're adding, identify what you've decided you're going to remove, and then have a conversation with your family about how to create an environment that will be successful for you. And so it may mean that, and every family solves this a little bit differently. It might mean taking it out of the kitchen and my eating environment. So if the family's going to eat that yummy food that I can't have, they'll go out and have the yummy food away from me. Or I will go out with my friends and they'll have the yummy food, again, away from me. Or that they will have that yummy food only in the family room downstairs and I won't go down there. Or only on the highest shelf that I can't reach without a step stool or a step ladder. So we find ways to make it harder for me to accidentally consume it. But we still allow family and friends who could consume it safely to do so in a way that doesn't tempt me.
Those are wonderful strategies. And to your point, having family support is truly everything. And I think, again, being able to make those small baby steps really does make a massive difference.
And I find, Jackie, when the family can't have that conversation, it's like, no, I'm not doing that. It's probably symptomatic that there's some deep conflict with that member of the family. And that's when talk therapy and family therapy can be super helpful. And sometimes this really reveals that there's family discord that needs to be worked through, and that we can heal some old hurts, get people back on track, or admit that you're not going to heal that old hurt and it's time to end the relationship and move on. And I'm pleased to say most often we're able to heal the old hurts and finally get those old hurts addressed and resolved and get the relationship back on a good footing.
Couldn't agree more. And Dr. Wahls, that could be a whole other episode we have, right? On the benefits
absolutely.
of emotional healing in terms of healing autoimmune related disorders as well. But going back to your theory that mitochondria are the primary drivers in progressive disease, what are some of the nutrients that support healthy mitochondria, and what supplements in particular should patients consider including in their regimen?
So if we look at mitochondrial function, all of the B vitamins have a role to play in the efficient generation of energy. So a B complex supplement can be super helpful. And because based on our genetics, I may be more or less efficient at how I use the B vitamins. And so I like to have people find a supplement that has what I call the activated B vitamins, so that bypasses some of those genetic vulnerabilities. So a good B vitamin supplement, preferably one that has activated Bs in it. And then minerals are cofactors for a lot of these vitamin actions. And so magnesium, zinc, selenium, sometimes a little bit of iodine, manganese, all of those can be super helpful. And many of our soils are relatively depleted because we've changed our farming practices. To that end, I encourage the use of sea salt, a little bit of seaweed, and the use of Epsom salts, soaks, and baths, and Dead Sea mineral soaks and baths, because we'll absorb some of those minerals through our skin. And then I talk about the importance of stomach acid, because stomach acid is necessary to digest our proteins and to absorb our minerals. And as we get older, we tend to lose stomach acid. And if you have an autoimmune condition, you may be attacking the cells that make stomach acid. And so there are some tests that we can do to sort out, do you have good stomach acid or not? Sometimes taking a little apple cider vinegar can be super helpful. And sometimes a test with betaine can help you sort out, do you have a stomach acid deficiency?
Are you a fan of digestive enzymes?
Digestive enzymes can be super helpful. One of the things that's really great about digestive enzymes is that can help me break down and digest the protein that is in my food down to amino acids. And to get all the way digested to amino acids, then it's less likely to get into my bloodstream and cause the food sensitivities. So digestive enzymes, super helpful. And it can make, if people are early on eating a lot of gluten-free products, we're still going out to restaurants, and they're trying hard to be gluten-free. But, about, I think it's 40% of gluten-free meals in restaurants have some gluten in them, cross-contamination. Wow. And about a quarter of gluten-free grocery items have gluten in them. So that's where digestive enzymes can be super helpful.
Interesting. And Dr. Wahl, so this conversation is obviously for folks who currently have an autoimmune disorder, but what is some actionable advice on reducing the risk of developing an autoimmune disorder?
Well, more and more people are agreeing that autoimmunity is, you have genetic vulnerability, some infections that get things started, but then there's all these environmental factors that are not well understood. And so the scientists say, well, we don't know what the factors are. Well, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's what we eat. It's how we're sleeping at night. It is our exercise. It is our social relationships. It's our meditative practices. And so what we can do is begin to address all of those health behaviors, those lifestyle factors, and nudge them towards away from disease promoting towards health promoting. So improve the quality of your diet, improve your stress reducing practices. So include a meditation, a mindfulness practice, time in nature, just sitting outside with gardens, your social connectedness. Being alone and lonely is very, very inflammatory. Having a spiritual or religious home also reduces the risk of depression, anxiety, cancer, and autoimmunity. You don't have to do all of those things, but I encourage you to begin picking a health behavior that you could move a little more towards health supportive behavior. And when that one is down, then you could sit back and say, well, what would I like to tinker with next?
Couldn't agree more with all of that. And in terms of other strategies, what are your thoughts on fasting for multiple sclerosis? Because we have heard so many incredible benefits of fasting, right? In promoting autophagy for cancer patients. How does that apply with patients with MS?
Well, all of this is a variation of what we call hormetic stress. So mild to moderate stress to how my cells run the chemistry of life. So heat stress, cold stress, exercise are really good. Spices are a little bit of hormetic stress as well. Fasting just means, our current eating pattern of grazing throughout the day, it is a new invention. It used to be you had to work really hard to get your food. And so we would have done a lot of exercise, got our food, brought it back to our village, our little camp, and then we had a social compact. The women, we made the food. The men ate it first, and then we got to have our food. And we'd have a couple days of food, plentiful food, and then we'd be low, and we'd have to repeat the cycle. We would go through periods of significant exercise, not much food, so that's sort of like fasting, or being in ketosis on the basis of exercise. Then we have a couple days of plentiful food, so now we're in the refed state for a couple days, and then we start it all over again. That is how our DNA evolved. And there is wonderful research that says we have better metabolic health, so better blood sugar control. We have less risk of obesity, less risk of diabetes. We have, if you're going through cancer treatments and you're in that ketogenic phase while you're taking your cancer treatment, the much better outcomes. And we have some early studies with multiple sclerosis that you have much better reset of your immune cells if you go through this fasting followed by a refed state. I also like this because if I do that, I get more stem cells released into my blood circulation. So the stem cells can go in and do the maintenance work on my brain, on my spinal cord, on my bones and muscles. So, I don't feel like I have to go get a stem cell treatment. I can just
use your body.
Do it myself. And you can do this with either like the intermittent fasting, 2 days a week of about 25% of your calories. You could do a periodic fast, reduced calories, 2 to 5 days a week, in a week, once a month. Or you could do a time restricted eating, having a, 8-hour eating window every day. And my advice for folks, again, I want people to make changes at a pace they can manage. So start wherever you're at. And maybe the first step is I'm not going to snack all day long. I'll just have 3 meals, and that's all I'm going to eat. And then maybe you're just going to go, after that feels pretty comfortable, and I want to take the next step. Now I'm going to go to 2 meals. When that feels pretty comfortable, then I'm going to narrow the eating window to whatever feels comfortable. And then maybe I want to do 2 days a week where I'm going to really reduce my calories. And then maybe I want to try this intermittent calorie restriction, and have reduced calories for 2 days or 3 days or even 5 days.
Absolutely. Such helpful strategies. And I feel like there's a consistent theme in this conversation, right? It's slowly integrating those practices for, again, long-term benefit. You don't have to completely flip over.
There's no need to rush. I just want you to slowly, steadily work on making a change that you and your family agree sounds interesting and that you'll like to explore.
Dr. Wahls, you truly are an inspiration and have been to so many people. What is next for you? I know you've been working on a series of clinical trials. Could you share a bit more on that with listeners?
So we do clinical trials. We've done 7. We've got the 8th one underway. I'm comparing a olive oil, time-restricted ketogenic diet to the modified paleo elimination diet to usual diet. I'm super excited. We're going to have 156 people in the study. We will bring people in for a baseline visit, a follow-up visit in 3 months, and then another visit at 24 months. We'll get a quality of life measures. Then we'll get clinical measures of walking hand, vision, and working memory. And we're going to get MRIs, so brain structure at the beginning and brain structure at the end. And, while my primary outcome is how diet impacts quality of life, patient-reported outcomes, we're also measuring clinical outcomes, and we're measuring what happens to brain volume. Because you see, the drugs do a really great job of turning off enhancing lesions and relapses. They don't do as very good a job of reducing brain volume loss. And brain volume loss is what drives disability. And my theory as to what the big driver is mitochondria. The mitochondria, if you don't address mitochondrial function, disability will progress, brain volume loss will progress. And we see in our clinical trials that people do, rather in my clinics, brain fog goes away very quickly. Mental clarity greatly improves. So I'm super optimistic that diet can lead, because it does so well at improving mental clarity, reducing fatigue. I am very optimistic that we'll be able to show that brain structure is impacted and that brain volume loss will get to healthy rates of aging, which would be huge because the drug studies have not been able to get to healthy rates of brain volume loss for the MS population yet.
I'm very excited to see the results of that. And I too am very optimistic, again, just based on seeing all of the work that you've done thus far, as well as all the emerging research on nutrition for brain function. Now,
anyone who's listening here, we've got about 82 people into the study. We can still get another 73 in. Would like to get everyone who's listening, please go over to terrywahls.com/MS study. You'll learn more about the study. There's a little link for you to click on to complete a screening form so we can get your name and address and some contact information and can begin the process of confirming the diagnosis and getting you, hopefully, enrolled in the study.
Wonderful. And I will share all of that in the show notes as well. And Dr. Wahls, is there anything else that you'd like to share coming up with listeners?
Yeah. So my mission is to empower people with multiple sclerosis and neuroimmune conditions to know there is so much that is under your control that can change the course of your disease. And so I'm hosting a free summit, the MS and Neuroimmune Summit. That'll go from July 5 through July 11. It's free, it's online, but you do need to pre-register. And Jackie will make sure you have the links so you can share that with everyone.
Absolutely, I will. And the last question I'd like to ask to everyone on the show, Dr. Wahls, is what does being well and strong mean to you?
It means thriving. It means having a rich and full life that's connected to friends and family. And it means when people look at me, they can be inspired with hope and gratitude for today and tomorrow.
I love that. And your life has truly been a testament to that. So you're right there. Well, Dr. Wahls, this has been wonderful. I look forward to continuing to support your work, and just thank you again for all of the wonderful work that you do.
Thank you. And thank you for all that you are doing, my friend.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to support the show, please subscribe, leave a rating and review, and share it with others. Be sure to visit wellandstrong.com to access notes from the show and to stay current with new content. I'm so grateful you joined me. Be well and be strong.